So I put my book together and I brought it to my son, who was 10 at the time, and said, "What do you think?" And he's like, "This is a great idea, but I don't think a kid would say those things." Like, he's like, "That kid sounds way too emotionally intelligent." So he helped me kind of like really bring in the kids' point perspective, what they might say, how they would say it. He basically really brought the character to life. And so I had to give him his cred. And so that's how he became my co-author.
I'm Summer.
And I'm Mike.
And we got married with children.
It's been 12 years since we got this gang together.
And we're still running the rapids of living with a blended family.
And sometimes that is just not easy.
If you're looking for support and tools when it comes to divorce, step-parenting, co-parenting, and giving it your best,
you're in the right place.
We're talking about everything.
You ready to get this party started?
Always.
Karyn, welcome to the show. Oh my goodness. We just had a little bit of a glitch getting started, but here we are, and I'm so happy you're here with me.
We're alive. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you and for you to share your story and your work with us, because it's amazing, and it's going to be so helpful for everyone listening. So before we get into all of that, can you give us a brief background on who you are and the work that you do?
Okay. My name is Karyn Glemaud. I like to call myself Bostonian Haitian because I was born and raised in Boston to Haitian parents. So I wear that with pride. I'm an author, a children's book author called Mommy's New Friend. I co-wrote it with my son, Mally, and I also do many other things. I'm an entrepreneur. I just started a food truck with a partner, and I'm doing my MBA, and I work full time. Is there anything else I can? I mean, I'm the head. I'm part head of a very blended family. My husband and I, we have 4 boys. Our oldest is adopted, and then my second is from a previous marriage, and then together we had 2. So very blended. And I throw my mother-in-law in there too.
I love it. Well, the reason I was so excited to talk to you is there's 2 things that stood out. I was like, this is going to be such a great topic in terms of, the book that you wrote, Mommy's New Friend, and how to introduce, at the very beginning of a blended family, how to do it, in a way that can be as smooth as possible. And then the other thing too is, I'm an entrepreneur. So I run another business and also do this podcast, and it's challenging, and but there's actually so many similarities in terms of running a business, being an entrepreneur, and then also facing the challenges of a blended family. And sometimes I learn one thing from business that helps me in the blended family, and then there's one thing in a blended family that totally helps me with business. So I was like, yes, I get to talk to somebody who gets that.
So true. And I guess I never framed it that way, but it is true. There's so much to learn from both.
Yeah, there really is. Mm-hmm. So I want to first talk about the book and what inspired you to write the book. And then how did you get your son to do this with you?
Okay. So the story behind the story is I just had a push from the universe to stop what I was doing and get aligned with my calling and my true passion, which was writing. And so I quit my job. I had a really good job. I quit. I was a single mom, and I moved to New Zealand with my son because someone had planted a seed in my head, like, oh, you should go and live in New Zealand on organic farmlands and write a book. And that's exactly what I did.
Wow.
For 3 months, my son and I lived across 3 different organic farmlands. And in exchange for room and board, I would work on the farms and help their families. And on my off times, I would write. And I initially came there with a writing project, very different from this. And I realized it was just going to be too big of a feat to make happen. So I thought, I don't want to return without something completed. And it popped in my head, oh, a children's book. This is, 20 pages. I could probably get something down. And the idea came. I was imagining, like, as a single mom, what would it be like when I finally meet that perfect person? How will I start that conversation with my son? What would he feel like? So the idea sparked and it just came to life over those 3 months. I did a lot of research while I was in New Zealand as well, like to see if there were any other books that were talking about this. And there was some books about, families looking different, or maybe a child struggling or feeling divided by two families, or, being in two different homes, whether if their parents are divorced. But no one ever really talked about how they would have that conversation or that very beginning. So I put my book together and I brought it to my son, who was 10 at the time, and said, what do you think? And he's like, this is a great idea, but I don't think a kid would say those things. Like, he's like, that kid sounds way too emotionally intelligent. So he helped me kind of like really bring in the kid's perspective, what they might say, how they would say it. He basically really brought the character to life. And so I had to give him his cred. And so that's how he became my co-author. That's about all he did. but it was a lot. I mean, he definitely brought the soul of the character to life. And then it was really on me. It took me several years to really finally publish it, to get past my own fears, get it published. And, I went through different bouts of that, and even different little tweaks in different versions. So by the time I did finally self-publish it, I was so happy I got to choose my illustrator, and the character I ended up naming my character after the last son my husband and I had, Max.
I love it.
Yeah. So it's really, I like to say that I kind of manifested my husband, because about a year later, actually maybe 6 months later, after I wrote this story about what it would be like, my husband came. So it was really cool, because it was almost like writing this book with my son kind of prepared us both for when that time came.
Yeah.
And it came.
Well, so for families that aren't writing the book, right, to prepare themselves, the question is, when you have gone through a divorce, that's one of the most sensitive things is, okay, maybe you've met somebody and now there's the sensitive topic of introducing your children. And the question is, how soon do my children meet the person that I'm falling in love with or have fallen in love with, or, somebody that's important in your life, while they might still be going through the hurt from a family being broken. Right. And I know so many people struggle with this. And I know people at so many different stages of divorce and blending a family, and some that have waited a really long time, some that haven't, some that are in that phase of, my kids are just so upset to see me with anyone else.
Yep. Yeah. Like you, I've seen many variations around my friend groups. And I mean, some were before me, most were after me, and it was great, because then I got to kind of give them my advice and coach them based on my own experience. But I don't think there's a right answer. I think what I would encourage people to especially those who are really afraid of that, to not be afraid and to lead with love, like that. And again, I don't think there's a real time frame to that. But I did feel like I was very intentional about the storyline and making some subtle suggestions in the storyline itself, to say, like, to think about, maybe you want to have a setting that is not as threatening as like bringing the person to your home for the first time they meet, So in the story, I had them meet in a restaurant. I thought that was like a neutral place where the kid doesn't feel like someone's encroaching on their territory. I think something like that is important to think about. And again, in the story, I had the mother, she was very caring and took the time to listen to her son's concerns and let him express his feelings, validated his feelings, but also she was firm about, that, look, mommy loves you and mommy also has friends.
Yeah.
And that was, I know for me, that was very important about, showing my son that I have a life outside of being mom. I'm Karyn first.
Right.
These were the subtle hints and suggestions I feel like we make in the story to encourage those who are maybe afraid to step out. But then again, like I said, I've had friends on all the spectrums where I have friends who constantly introduce new guys, and when it doesn't work out, they're moving on to the next. And
yeah,
in some ways that makes me cringe, but I don't judge her. I don't judge them based on that. I just know that for myself, I never wanted it to be in that way, not immersed. Like I've always tell my son, these are my friends, and he wouldn't tell the difference between my cousin or a real friend or someone more intimate. Like I kept intimacy out of the conversation with my kids.
Yeah.
So those are kind of some ways I try to approach it. But ultimately, I definitely think it's important to if you find love and to be able to share that and with my son. Like for me, it was very important for my son to see mommy in a loving relationship and to be an example, especially since my divorced relationship wasn't anything like that. So I take pride in being able to show my son the love between my husband and I. And, it's a beautiful thing when you can share love and lead with love and encourage with love.
I love that so much. And it's so true that there's not one right answer and every child is going to respond differently. But I do think what I think is interesting is that, like you said, there are some that are introducing new people all the time.
Right.
And when it doesn't work out, then there's another one. And then there are also some that are the very opposite, that it's like, they're waiting. And they're not showing that, hey, mommy is also another person besides just mommy. And there's like these two extremes and there's something in the middle. And I appreciate what you're saying, because I think it is so important for our kids to see what a loving relationship looks like and how we choose someone and how that person treats us and how we treat them. And to really also show, we love you and we are here for you, but we're not martyrs, we're also having our own life, because ultimately that's what you want them to have when they become an adult and throughout their life.
Right. It's about understanding that, you can make, I wouldn't say it's a mistake, right? But you can, just because you're into something now, like you have to have the flexibility with that to go with life, because sometimes life takes you in directions unknown. So yeah, I had every intention to be married and stayed married the first time. But look, mommy and daddy didn't work out. They realized they're better off as friends, or they're better off not together. And that's okay too. And that you can find love again. And I think that's also an important message I wanted to share with my son, because there's always that question: why didn't you just stay with my dad? Or and yeah, that's the lesson I think I try to portray in being in this relationship, this new relationship.
So as you've now grown as a family, and you said there's 4, so you have 2 biological, you have, did you say 1 step, 1 adopted?
Yeah, so 2 biological with my husband now, but my second one I brought into the relationship. I came from my previous relationship, and then and the oldest is adopted. Yes.
So that's like, I mean, I know, because we're a blended, we have 4 kids that we blended together. So, and I know it's different again for all different families, but there are undoubtedly there's challenges, right?
Oh my God.
What are some things that you have learned to really keep it together, keep it so that everybody's feeling important and valued and that they matter? Like, what are some tips that you have? Because I think that that's like, that is so hard, especially as you move in together. Everybody's fighting for attention. All of a sudden, this one doesn't feel as important. This one, there's just so much that's going on, and it's hard on the kids. It's also hard on the parents. So what are things that you have learned and have done?
I don't know if you feel this way, Summer, but I think as the mother, I end up being like the one stuck in the middle of it all. Like everyone comes to me to manage it all, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Do you feel that way?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So but luckily I think for me, I had the advantage of, my undergraduate degree had a lot of psychology in it. So I want to give a shout out to that. I think that helped me to really be aware and to be hypersensitive to where everyone is and what they are feeling. So what really makes our blended family specifically complex was that when we adopted my son at 12, I came with my son, essentially. Like I came with the son I birthed, and they're at a 12 years old was a really sensitive time for both of them. My adopted son, I think, wanted so bad to have the bond that my biological son and I had, and it just wasn't possible. I raised him for 12 years at that point. They're both the same age, about 4 months apart, by the way.
Okay.
So in my mind, I was thinking, oh, great, y'all be best friends. That did not happen. They were quite opposite. And it was even more strenuous because my adopted son felt really jealous of the bond that we had already had. And it almost immediately made him feel left out, like he was, like me and my biological son had a secret, like we were part of a secret club that he just knew nothing about. And so it was just that real weird dynamic. And that while my biological son, who didn't feel threatened by him, started to just get annoyed by the way that my adopted son was visibly, jealous. And so that was happening before the two younger ones came. And I just try to really promote communication. So I would often I would always try to lead conversations to allow my adopted son to express his feelings, be honest. I try to create platforms where he can, and I also try to explain to him, like, it's not a competition, but, in boys' minds, I don't think that translates, but I try to just keep reinforcing that you guys, that we're brothers, that we're all part of the same team here. And it took time. So I think patience, communication, being hypersensitive and aware of everyone's feelings, those are three key things that helped me get through blending the family and understanding that it's not going to be perfect in the beginning. And I promise you, I couldn't see that in the beginning, but it gets better. It really gets better if you stay consistent to those three things: communication, and reinforcing love, reinforcing, comfort and security, and having that awareness. Those are really going to help you get through it and push through it and keep pushing through it. Don't give up. Now they're fine.
Yeah, no, it's true. I remember, I can look back, or I can see people going through those early phases like I have gone through. And it's like, oh, I know that feeling where you're just kind of questioning, can this work out? Or is this going to be horrible for the kids? Like, are they so unhappy because these two aren't getting along? Right. All of those feelings. And it does change. And then you still have bad days, you still have a bad season, or something happens, and then it's like, oh, well, now things are great again. And then you kind of pause and go, but that's just life. That's not just unique to a blended family. That also happens in any kind of a family, and in anything in life. And like you said before, it's going in going, oh, it's got to be perfect, because you come into it going, everybody's going to get along. It's so wonderful. And it just, in any situation, life just isn't really that way. You work at creating those moments, and you learn at how to manage the hard times so that you actually appreciate the good times that much more.
Correct. And 6 years, again, like you said, it's not perfect still, and there's moments, but we definitely found we've all been able to kind of define our roles in this family, in a sense, especially for the two older boys. And I think something about having the two younger kids really did bond them. And I just, we're all one. Like I really push that message that we're all on the same team.
Yes.
We're like a unit. It's us against the world.
But you know what? That's what's so important, because I think a lot of, the conflict happens because of, feelings of fear and insecurity. And when you first come together, it's like, oh, is my mom going to love him more now? Or why are they getting along so well? And she just got upset with me this morning. There's those little moments. And when you can reinforce all the time, like you said, like everybody has a voice and we want to hear all of your feelings, and we are a team, like we all go together. And the more that they see that you get through those hard times or feelings, the more secure that they feel and are like, oh, I'm a part of something. Like we're all a part of this. It's not just his or hers. It's all of us together.
Right. And we're creating something new, right?
Yes.
I mean, because I think at the core of it is, the change of it all is scary for everyone, especially harder on the kids who may not be able to vocalize what they're feeling.
Right.
So I always try to keep it fun. I try to I'm like a big kid. Sometimes I, will take sometimes if the issue feels too sticky, or I try to lighten it up a bit and just push through it. And, the moments I feel where I have the biggest breakthroughs sometimes, and I think this is also a good advice, is, pulling the person and the individual aside and just giving them that one-on-one attention. Sometimes that's all they need, is just someone to hear them, one-on-one basis. And I as the mother, I feel like I'm kind of the person everybody comes to on that level.
Yeah, that is very true. But you've seen firsthand, I've seen this too. We were blended when our kids were very, 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 very little, toddlers, like really little. And then you see them as they grow. We've got teenagers now, and the things that they say and the way that they're able to communicate. And you really look back and go, wow, that was so awesome. It was so worth it, because you saw them as kids struggling. Like you said, they don't necessarily know how to communicate. They're just learning how to communicate feelings and expressing emotions. And to then hear them and what their perception was, to look back and see how they felt then and how they feel now. I feel like if you really stick through it, and like you said, I love your three pillars, but really communicating, making them feel safe, all of those things, it totally pays off. It really, really does. And it's so cool that even when there are challenges, it's like, it's okay, because you guys are strong enough and you're gonna pull together. So it's just a really cool thing that you don't see it when you are first in it at the very beginning. No. Like you yeah.
Stay the course, guys. Stay the course.
Yes.
Hey guys, did you know that you can text us now? Like if you want to be the first to know if we're going live or just launched a new episode, or maybe that we just went out on a date or had a fight, who's right, who's wrong, maybe we ate too much for dinner or missed a workout. No, seriously, we want to share more of what's going on in our lives, and we want to make sure that you don't miss out on anything new. So send a quick hello to 760-389-3722, and let's stay connected. All right, back to the show.
Okay, so you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You have a new venture now, the food truck, which is so awesome.
Thank you.
How is that, talking about being the person that like everybody comes to and is, wants you to fix everything whenever it goes wrong. Well, you also have that, when you're an entrepreneur, right? Like there's a lot of pressure when you're in a blended family and you have that role when you're an entrepreneur and you have people looking to you. It's pressure. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's hard, but it is pressure. What are things that you have learned in terms of keeping the calm and not letting it get to you so that you don't, have that like irritability, like when you have a lot of pressure, it's very easy to get irritable and like snap at somebody, even though you're like, shoot, I'm not even mad at you for that. I just have other pressures going on.
Oh, that happens. The snapping happens quite a bit.
Right.
But that's actually not my biggest concern. I feel like my biggest enemy in this experience is guilt. Like, oh my God. That thing just sits on your stomach and like makes you think so bad about yourself and you question everything. And that is the part I think, I don't know that I was prepared for that when I was, because I did understand that this was going to take time away and that I was going to have to maybe, manage all these moving parts, but I guess I wasn't prepared for the level of guilt. And I don't know if that's a mom thing or I'm pretty sure that, I don't know. I think anyone who's heading a household and managing a family at the same, or managing business at the same time is.
And especially those that are in like a blended family and you might not have, you don't have full custody of your kids. You already have a limited amount of time with them, but totally relate to that one.
I can imagine that too. So guilt is my biggest enemy. But I try to really keep that voice quiet as much as possible. Remind myself that I'm doing this for for everybody's, what I think is best for everybody, and to trust myself too, like trust in my decisions. But when it comes to managing the stress and the pressure, what I try to, I try to be hyper aware and hypersensitive. So there has been times when I've like, my kid is pulling mommy, and I'm like trying to write an email and I might snap. And then I immediately catch myself and I say, oh, I'm sorry. Give him big kisses. It just like, it's almost like sometimes those moments are great because it really forces me to just stop for a second and pause, look my kid in the eye and give him some love and realize, wow, I haven't done that in a while. Like maybe I need to do this more often. It does kind of pull me out. The other thing I've always let, and again, I have a business partner. She's actually a single mother herself. So I've made it a point from the very beginning when we started this thing, like, look, we're moms. We have to make our family a priority in some way, like we have to block out specific times and ways that we're going to, because I was afraid that if we don't start this early, we're going to lose that time and we're not going to be able to get it back. So I think that would be an advice I'd give. Like when you're starting entrepreneurship, think about it ahead of time. Like what are days that are like, absolutely no way, I'm going to block this time off and spend quality time with my family, or, and then also for yourself, you need time for yourself as well. So these are two things I was really adamant about incorporating as we started our business.
Yeah. Time for self. Yeah. Time for self is so important. And you of course always say, well, I don't have time for that. And I'll just put that aside because these other things are way more important. But it is amazing when you actually take it, how refreshed you are and how much better you do at all those things that you say you have to do.
Yes.
You're so much more productive when you just have that reset. Yes. And it's like, I will still feel guilty taking it, but I'm but I'm going to do it anyways. And then once I'm in it, I'm like, no, you know what? This is good. And afterwards I'm like, wow, what was I operating off of before? Because I'm so much more energetic now. I'm so much more refreshed. And sometimes it's just like sometimes it's time out of the day, like a little piece of meditation or something during the day. And sometimes it's like, no, I need like a full 2 days or a full weekend or something where I'm just literally going to relax and do things that I love and fuel me up.
I agree. I agree 100%. Yeah, you're right. Like sometimes it is just that 5 seconds in the car.
Yes.
Before you go into the office or, I like to carve out specific, like at least 2 days out of the month. Like I block out certain days like in advance. Like, all right, I'm going away with hubby for the night, or I'm gonna, like I really try to steal those days and work my work schedule around it. The other thing I think it's important too is like I realize with entrepreneurship, you're trying to get everything right away, and that's not possible.
Nope.
It's not possible. So I like to think of it as a house, and I'm taking one room at a time to get each room in order. And then, by the time you come back around the house again, that first room needs a little bit more fixing. And then, you just keep moving around the house and taking it room by room or step by step. And in the beginning, it is crazy. And maybe you are you're sacrificing your me time in the very, very beginning, but it gets better. Same thing with blended families, right? It gets better.
No, and it's so true, because I can truly say some of the most effective, powerful things that I've implemented in my business came from not getting it right, from getting it wrong, and then learning, okay, this is how it needs to be done. But sometimes you don't know the holes or how something can go wrong until it goes wrong. And then you go, oh, okay, so this is what I need to do so that doesn't happen again. And like you said, same thing in a blended family. Oh my gosh, that is so true. And it's just the way people respond or the family reacts, or, oh shoot, that went terribly wrong. And you go, okay, so moving forward, let's try it this way instead.
Yes. So I don't know. I think, and I'm still pretty early in my business too. I'm like a month and a half in. So it's really, I have to say it's gotten better. It's definitely gotten better. And I'm starting to see a little bit more, like we're winning a little bit more every day,
Yeah. Yep. Just keep moving that needle, like little tiny bits at a time.
And I talk to my kids about it. I keep them involved too, so that they kind of feel a part of it, and they know, what's happening. That's kind of a good way to kind of tie in the family and the business too, is like to make them feel part of it.
Yeah. And they get to learn from you, which is so cool. I love when kids get to learn firsthand, whether it's business, career, whatever it is that you're doing that isn't related to being a parent. Right. It's so cool when they get to see that firsthand and you share with them and talk to them about it. Because I think there's also a bunch of kids that are just like, I have no idea what my parents do. So they're just totally, it's like, how do you not know? But that happens. And I think it's because they're like, they don't need to know that. And actually it's pretty cool to share with them all of those things. They get to learn from you. I certainly learned from my parents. I mean, my dad was an entrepreneur, so I learned so many good lessons from him. And it was obviously what, a big part of inspiring me to have my own businesses.
That's really cool. My mom was quite the opposite. And she was very much a hard worker, 9 to 5, dedicated to her job. And I just knew, I guess she inspired me too, because I was like, I'm not doing that. That's not me. That's not the life I want. But it's interesting. I do find a lot of entrepreneurs do have, it comes, especially if you have it in the generation before you, it's only natural. And I am seeing that, like my older boys are already, thinking and talking about their own businesses. And so that's really exciting to see that I inspired them.
Yes, I love that. Okay, so we were talking about the book. I want to let people know where they can find the book if they want to buy it.
Yep. Mommy's New Friend is available on Amazon.com. It's also available on BarnesandNobles.com and Walmart.com, or they could just go to my website at www.KarynGlemaud.com. That also links them directly to where they can purchase it on Amazon. So,
and on your site, by the way, which is gorgeous, you have other tools and a blog and other ways that you can support single parents or those that are in that phase of just beginning to blend a family.
Correct.
Awesome.
Correct. Yeah.
So we will definitely have a link to that as always.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so cool. You guys listening, you have to go check out her site. It's so beautiful. And you have all these great quotes, and there's a picture of you and your son who wrote the book together, which is so cool. I love it. I love all that you're doing. I'm so excited. I hope you're going to blog about your experience, like as an entrepreneur and you know, running a blended family and all that together. I know, when you have time. Exactly.
I feel so bad. I'm like, I have so much writing and things so many stories I'd love to share. I just haven't had the chance to get it down, but I promise as soon as, you know, my business is a little bit more, you know, got its wheels, you know, I'll definitely be doing more writing. That's where I'm most passionate about. I'm also passionate about sharing tips and tricks and, helping people through my own experience.
Yeah.
I love that for sure.
Well, I'm so grateful. Awesome. I'm so grateful that you shared with us today. I think it's just so amazing. I'm like at the back of my mind going, could I write a children's book? That could be really fun. Because when you said at the beginning, oh, instead of writing a complete, big full book, it's like, what if you start with something that's, 20 pages? And the funny thing is you probably don't know this about me, and I don't know how many of listeners here know this, but I used to be a ghostwriter many years ago. So I used to write books for authors. So I could write a complete book. And then when it came to my own book, it would take forever. I wrote one fiction novel. It was super fun, but it was like, it took so much longer when I was doing it. That was something for me. So,
you're more harder on yourself.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of a children's book, and especially when it's these type topics, because I don't see a ton of children's books that are talking about, unless I've missed it, but they're talking about these issues. It's like, it's a common thing, especially today, so to talk about these specific things, and especially in short, really consumable, good, fun books is so awesome, especially for young kids, to help them navigate, something that feels a little shaky.
Right. And I remember being a little weary, thinking like, is this too heavy for a children's book? But no, I think that there can be a great way to balance, teaching kids or, encouraging kids to have feelings and keeping it light and funny as well.
Yes.
And no better than an expert like yourself to write something. So, like, there's so much, especially around the blended family. There's a lot more to write about and talk about that I'm sure you'd be great at. So I definitely encourage you to explore that option.
Well, thank you. I'm just super stoked that you did it. You're inspiring me.
I'm glad I did it too. I was very scared in the beginning, but I'm glad I pushed through it, and I've got it up there. I've gotten a lot of readers' response saying they needed to hear this. They needed this story.
Oh yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, everyone, go to KarynGlemaud.com. Again, it's KarynGlemaud.com. And of course, we'll have a link to it in the show notes. And Karyn, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Summer. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. And we like to say, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you love, and be bold enough to share it with someone you don't. See you next time.